Next, I wanted to go over the difference between a strong correlation and a weak correlation. A positive correlation can be weak or strong, and a negative correlation can also be weak or strong. If a correlation is a weak correlation, it means that the correlation is less consistent. It means that there's more participants who don't fit the overall pattern of the scatter plot. Let's think of an example that might be a weak positive correlation. What if we were recording income and account balance? We were recording how much money people make per year and how much money they have in the bank. Now, it might seem like that people with higher incomes would have higher account balances because if you make more money, it seems like you would be putting more money in the bank and you would have more money saved. But that might not be true for a lot of people because it also depends on how much money you're saving. If you have a person who's making a lot of money, but they spend a lot of money, then that person will have a low account balance even though they have a high income. So let's look at what this type of scatter plot might look like if we recorded the data. We might see a positive correlation in the scatter plot in which people tend to have more money saved when they have higher incomes. But we might also see a lot of people who are exceptions. What I mean is we might see a lot of people who don't fit this overall pattern. For example, we might have a lot of people who don't make very much money, but they have a lot of money saved because they're very good at saving money. So we could have some people up here in this corner area. So these people would have low incomes but high account balances, and we might have some people down here also. We might have some people with high incomes who spend a lot of money, and since they spend a lot of money, they don't have much money saved in the bank. They have low account balances. So we might have some of those people out here in this corner with high incomes and low account balances. So if we were recording income and account balance, we might expect to see something like this, in which we do sort of see a positive correlation in here, but there's also a lot of people who don't fit that pattern. There's a lot of people up here, and there's a lot of people down here also, which means that the overall pattern isn't as nice. It's not as consistent as it is down here. So this one would be called a weak positive correlation. This type of data set here would be showing a weak positive correlation. And I'm thinking that number of miles driven per week and amount of money spent on gas would be more of a strong correlation, meaning it would be more consistent, because if you drive more miles per week, you always spend more money on gas. So there aren't going to be very many people up here who don't do very much driving but still spend a lot of money on gas. Because if you don't spend much, if you don't do very much driving, there isn't any reason to expect you to be spending a lot of money on gas up here. And if you do a lot of driving, you're almost definitely not going to be down here, meaning you're almost definitely not going to be spending only a little bit on gas if you're doing this much driving. So we're not going to have as many people in these corner areas down here and up here. So if you have more people in these corner areas here and here who are throwing off the correlation in the scatter plot, then you have a weaker correlation. But if people fall into this, if the people follow a line pretty closely, then it's a stronger correlation. And I'll show you what I mean by following a line. We could put a line in here to show that this is a positive correlation. So we could put a rising line in here to summarize the correlation that we see, meaning this is showing that as people drive more miles per week, they're spending more money on gas. And it's a positive correlation, which means this the line rises. So this is just a way of showing that we have a positive correlation. It's just kind of like a summary of the scatter plot. And if it's a strong correlation, people are following the line closely, meaning as this variable goes up, this variable goes up pretty consistently along with it. Not very many dots are far away from the line, but if you have a weak positive correlation, then the dots, even though the dots are overall rising from left to right, you have a lot more dots that are scattered far from the line, out here and out here, which makes it a weaker positive correlation. So I said I was thinking that this would probably be a strong positive correlation, meaning more consistent, and this one up here would probably be a weaker positive correlation, meaning it would be a lot less consistent. Let's try to think of an example that might be a weak negative correlation. I was thinking about maybe number of units that a college student takes and the amount of free time they have per week. Let's put number of units down here and free time up here. It seems like that college students who take more units would have less free time because they would be doing more studying or more homework, but that might not be true for a lot of people. So let's take a look at what the scatter plot might look like. You might sort of see a correlation in which the dots are dropping from left to right. But we're also going to have a lot more people who don't fit the pattern very well. So we could have a lot of people down here who aren't taking very many units, but still don't have very much free time, because your free time has to do with a lot more things. I mean, it has to do with a lot of different things besides just how many units you're taking. It has to do with how many hours you're working per week and how many other responsibilities you have. So we could have a lot of people who aren't taking very many units, but since they're working so much, they don't have very much free time. So there probably are going to be a lot of people down here in this corner area. We could also have a lot of people up here who are taking a lot of units but still have a lot of free time. Maybe they're taking easy classes, or maybe they just don't do very much studying even though they're taking a lot of units. So maybe there could be a lot of people who are taking a lot of units, but they still have a lot of free time anyway. So we're going to have a lot of people in these corner areas probably, which means we'll probably have a lot of people who are far away from this line. If it's a negative correlation, then you would put a dropping line in the scatter plot. The line would drop from left to right, because this is showing that overall, people who take more units tend to have less free time. We can see that that's true with these dots in here, but there's also a lot of people who are far away from the line who don't follow this negative correlation. So this is, if this was the data set, then this would be showing a weak correlation between free time and number of units, meaning it's showing that as the number of units goes up, free time goes down, but it doesn't go down very consistently. What about number of missed payments and credit score? I'm thinking that this would be a more consistent correlation, or a stronger correlation, because as when people miss more credit payments, their credit score, at least I think, it almost always goes down. So if you miss more credit card payments, your credit score will go down pretty consistently. In other words, you probably aren't going to find many people down here who haven't had very many missed payments but still have low credit scores anyway. And you probably aren't going to find very many people up here who are missing a lot of payments but still have good credit scores. So we're not going to have, compared to up here, we're not going to have very many people in these corner areas. The people are going to be more closely following this line that drops from left to right, which means it'll be a stronger negative correlation. So I think this would be a strong negative correlation. And even if it's a strong correlation, we could still have a few people who don't fit the overall pattern. For example, I might have a participant who's driving a Hummer, and a Hummer gets very poor mileage, meaning it uses up a lot of gas. So that person would be spending a lot of money on gas, even if they're not doing very much driving. So I might have one person who's driving a car like a Hummer, and they're spending a lot of gas. They're spending a lot of money on gas up here and not doing very much driving. But if it's a strong correlation, I won't have as many of these people who stand out. There won't be as many of them. And if it's a weak correlation, then there'll be more people who stand out from the pattern and don't fit the overall pattern. So this would still be a fairly strong correlation, even if I just have one person out here who's not fitting the overall pattern. This one person wouldn't weaken the correlation very much. And next I wanted to show you a website that can help show you the difference between a weak and a strong correlation. It can actually show you the difference between negative and positive, and the difference between weak and strong.